I'd like to introduce Dr. Mirza Ikhtiar Beg Saab, who is the chairman and the CEO of the Beg Group of Industries. He's a thought leader. He's one of my favorite columnists in the Urdu Akhbar. He has been the chairman of Pak UAE Business Council, as well as the chairman of the Site Association of Industry and advisor to the Prime Minister on textiles and a number of other sectors. So please welcome Dr. Mirza Ikhtiar Beg Saab.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. What a mesmerizing lecture, the motivating speech. Thank you very much. It's very heart-touching. It's a pleasant job to introduce a very dear friend, Mr. Muhammad Zubair. Mr. Zubair has been associated with Nutshell, a very close friend of Mr. Asfar Hassan. And his gracing the occasion today is the very last minute, maybe 3 o'clock day before midnight, somebody for while talking to him. And it's a great honor for all of us that one of the members of the corporate Pakistan group, Mr. Muhammad Zubair, a friend of us from Karachi, been designated as 32nd Governor of Sindh. Currently, he is the Minister for State, Chairman Privatization Commission, and leader of Pakistan Muslim League Noon. The appointment reflects the confidence of the government and the party leadership on his abilities, and looking at your proven track record, because me and Zubair have been maybe 24 TV programs, supported each other, and I always admire his composedness and a charm, the way he treat the other panelists at the various TV channels. And Mr. Zubair holds an MBA degree from IBA Karachi. He taught financial management at IBA from 1981 to 1986. And he spent more than 25 years at the key position at a global IT company, IBM. From 1981 to 2007, he was posted in Paris, Rome, Milan, and Dubai. After joining Pakistan Muslim League Noon, he became part of the party's economic team in 2012 and was appointed Chairman Board of Investment in 2013. In the recent Brahma League's affairs, he established himself as a face of the party, but in a very graceful manner, Zubair, in a very graceful manner. It's a treat to have Mr. Zubair with us today before his oath-taking ceremony as the Governor of Sindh. His appointment as the Governor of Sindh will definitely strengthen the federation and provincial coordination. We from Corporate Pakistan Group congratulate him and wish him good luck and the success in his new assignment. Thank you, Mr. Zubair.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Yesterday was my last day in Islamabad, and we have this small team in the Prime Minister House where we debate on a daily basis politics and business and economy. And Musaddiq Malik is part of that team. And yesterday when I was saying goodbye to everyone, and I wished him the best, I said that you will be the happiest that I am leaving this team, because I and Musaddiq debated, and it was always difficult to find time from him, or he found it difficult that I would intervene so often in his pitch for something, that I said, now you are alone and no one will interfere and he will have a field day. So I wish you the best. And that was the reason that he was paying so much tribute to me. Because we fought and disagreed, and that's what the meaning of the debate was. I mean, this small team, because I think every political party or every government, for that matter, uh, normally runs on a day-to-day basis. You have to have a sort of a team or people who are debating issues away from day-to-day activities, and that's what we were doing, and I think Musaddiq is a great example of that teamwork. And as always, mostly rather, I would say, that even today, although his speech was absolutely fantastic, as is the case always, with brilliant ideas, but I still have a lot of disagreement, and I'll share that because that's very important. He thought about the fact, and it was very right. I mean, what he was saying, that no one in the 60s could predict what Pakistan would be in the 70s. Absolutely no one could, because we had a system and BD rule or whatever, Ayub Khan's presidential system, and we thought, and everyone in the country then, and if you read history books, thought that we are absolutely on a path unparalleled among the third world countries, and Pakistan would come of age very soon and beat the hell out of all the other countries, and that would include countries like Malaysia and Turkey and UAE and whatever. I mean, I think that was the thinking, and there was absolutely no doubt about that. The economy was booming, more than 6% of average growth rate. And then the 1965 war took place. And the 65 war, as most historians would agree, was of our own doing. We thought we have to take Kashmir physically, because Pakistan had attempted to negotiate with India for 18 years or so at the UN and at the various international forums, and was not successful. So there was this mindset. It's easy for us to criticize now, but I think that was the mindset representing the entire aspirations of the people of Pakistan at that point in time. But that was a huge, huge mistake, because it put back Pakistan, weakened Ayub Khan, led the rise of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and his socialist policies. And that was one of the worst things that could happen as far as Pakistan's economy was concerned, because the 22 families were identified as a symbol of hatred, and everyone went after them, regardless of the fact of their contribution to the massive economic growth of the 1960s or 50s and the future that held for Pakistan. So we went to 71 war. By the way, 65 war also led to a major contribution towards alienating the people of Bangladesh, because they thought that they are not really the part of Pakistan, because they were left defenseless. Had India attacked Pakistan, then they would have just run over. So that also led, and as Ayub Khan weakened, the new political aspirations and so on and so forth. So 71 war happened, and the 22 families and many other big businesses, they lost half of their businesses in East Pakistan, and whatever was left was taken over by the government here. So I agree that no one could have predicted, and then the rise of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, he did many great things, let's be honest about it, including the 1973 constitution, but it completely changed the Pakistani dynamics. And no one could predict the 80s when Zia came and so on and so forth. But the disagreement, Musaddiq, is with regard to the future. And that there is a very simple reason for that. Pakistan has also come of age and has matured as a nation. We have agreed, all major stakeholders, because we have experimented so much over the last 50, 60 years, presidential system, parliamentary system, caretaker setups, military rules, and whatnot. But I think there is a consensus now, even there would be most people critical of the government today or tomorrow or in the past, but there is a simple agreement that Pakistan must continue with the political system that it has now finally agreed. The process of political stabilization, which began around 2007, has matured. And no matter what people talked about in recent years about the possibility of military intervention or some kind of a change coming through unconstitutional means, I think there was resistance from all major stakeholders. And that included the judiciary, the military itself, the civil society, the media, and all other major stakeholders, the political parties itself, because that was also very important. Because literally, in the past, as soon as the government was formed, the main opposition party would be running to Pindi to get the support from army to start destabilizing the government in power. And that led eventually to some kind of a change. So hopefully, and I'm very certain that apart from the changes that you talked about, obviously technological changes, and we must be ready for those changes. But in terms of Pakistan, I think there's much more, you could predict Pakistan much better than what was the case in the past. So that was the disagreement, but nothing else in that sense. Just a word or two about, because this event is about HR, and I actually didn't know till I came here, this event is about HR. So I thought it's a good few minutes that I should spend, because I'm coming from Islamabad after 3.5 years. And this is the corporate world. And Shaukat Tareen, obviously a great legendary corporate executive, one of the best that Pakistan has produced, talked about performance evaluation, talked about merit, and those things are extremely important and essential to the growth of the corporations. No organization can grow without having this effective HR system where people are hired on merit, where there's a regular performance appraisal, where the best are rewarded and the worst are punished. So when we all agree that when it comes to the public sector entities, as soon as we try to introduce the same system in public sector, everyone jumps. Ye katle-aam nahi hone denge. I mean, I am bewildered when we all agree on that system. And I share that very relevant practical thing. I mean, two of my privatization board colleagues are sitting here, Zafar Iqbal Saab and Zafar Khan Saab. And we did a lot of very good work, or at least we tried to build up on this narrative. So we went on this PIA privatization process, and we went till the stage that no previous board had gone through in terms of the professional work. Because remember, any privatization requires about 75–80% of the professional work, which is the hiring of the financial advisors, which are led by the investment banks, and it includes chartered accountants, the HR firm, the law firm, the communication strategists, and so on and so forth. So they start what we call the due diligence process, which is technical, HR, financial, legal, and all aspects of the organization, and build up what we call the institutional memory, so that you know exactly what are the strengths and weaknesses of that particular organization. And once you have completed that, you can then either go through the restructuring process or the privatization process. But you must have this first phase completed. So we completed that first phase. We passed the ordinance for legislation which was required to privatize PIA. We faced the reaction from the employees, from labor organizations, from the political opposition. All planes were grounded. All employees worldwide of PIA went on strike, and we resisted that. Unfortunately, during that period, 2 employees also died in a shooting or something. So we resisted, we were absolutely committed, and then there were these negotiations which involved all the parliamentary parties. And they were just not willing to go on with their plan. So when, after several meetings and spread over several days or weeks, this is what I suggested to them: privatization or no privatization. We are the leadership here. All political parties are represented here. This is what I propose. If it has to be through legislation, let's do that now, or whatever is required. But let's agree on a single point agenda. I, as privatization minister, will commit not going ahead with privatization, not just of PIA, but all state entities. But let's agree to provide the management of public sector entities the same rights as enjoyed by the private sector. And then you can hold me accountable for not turning them around. But if you tie my hands behind and then ask me to produce results and to turn public sector entities, that's not going to happen. And there's this big reason that you also must understand. When we talk of the great Pakistan of the 1960s and 70s, and truly it was great, institutions like PIA and other institutions flourished, and people questioned why we can't produce the same results now. The reason is Pakistan has completely changed. Believe me, it has changed. The rights enjoyed by the legendary Mr. Noor Khan were completely different by someone who's the chairman of PIA today. He can't even transfer an employee. Forget about performance evaluation. Forget about punishment. Forget about firing. And Shaukat Tareen mentioned about IBM, and I can share that. I mean, how deadly the challenges are if you're working in institutions, and I've worked in institutions like IBM, and I can give you two examples. If a sales guy did not achieve 3-quarter results, back-to-back 3-quarter sales results, it's out of the company. Out of the company, as simple as that. If you have a corporate audit and it's unfavorable, the CFO is out of the company and he knows it. And that is the challenge. So we have invited trouble for ourselves. We keep referring to cases which are not related to Pakistan. The courts were not independent. Today, any employee of the public sector can go to the court and get a stay for any transfer. Forget about firing. There are 13 public sector institutions where for the last 2 years we want to change the CEO. We can't do it because they have got the stay from various high courts or Supreme Court. I mean, this is the situation. There was no media which was independent. There was no sword hanging. And even if the opposition was there, you could just put the guy behind bars and that was it. So Pakistan has completely changed. So whatever solutions we are trying to find, we have to find in the context of today's Pakistan, not in the context of what was happening in the 60s and 70s. And just also one example, because that keeps coming back, and I don't deny that those things are not important. The example of Singapore or UAE and some of the other countries, or China, breathtaking economic growth. But are they related to Pakistan? Is the system the same as the case in Pakistan? Do you ever see a building which will be, the structure would be complete and you go after 10 years, you'll find it in the same way in Dubai or Singapore or China? No, because simply there is authoritarian rule. I mean, recently, I give you example of some of the regulatory authorities which were put under the line ministries. And there was hue and cry in terms of whether those institutions will be independent or not. And there's no denying the fact that they should be independent. But I think when we look at any decision, it has to be looked in the context of the economic stage where you are. Here is this organization, NAPRA, which gives tariff to the potential investor, whether you are talking about transmission lines or a coal project or whatever. And if that institution is taking 10 months to give this simple tariff, which investor in the world will wait for 10 months? And then everyone criticizes that the independence is being compromised. If the ruler of Dubai wants a tariff at 10 p.m. on a certain day, he will have it on his table in the morning, come what may. Or the same would be true of Singapore, and the same has been true for China. So when we give examples of those countries, there's a huge difference. Give the same right to the government here, and I think then the comparison becomes realistic. And it does not absolve us from our weaknesses, by the way. It does not absolve it does not absolve government of the day for the weaknesses or the poor performance in any field. And Certainly, I would be the first one to admit that we could have done far better than what has been the case. But the context, please understand, this is a different country. The civil military, the religious factor, the Pakistan-India relationship, none of them, these are major issues that every government has faced and has impeded economic growth. Why has economic growth been far better during the military rules than has been the case in the... Because during the military rule, and you can go back not too far back, the Musharraf period, we had excellent relations with India. The same Vajpayee against whom General Musharraf did Kargil signed a peace accord in Islamabad a few years later and still holds, General Musharraf holds Mr. Vajpayee in high esteem. When Pakistan and India forces were facing off each other, and it was very tension-packed environment in the 80s, I think 81 or something, General Ziaul Haq flew to India. Pakistan cricket team was there, and he was watching and laughing at a cricket match. And he did the right thing. I'm not blaming him. But as Chief of Army Staff and the President, he could do that. But if the Prime Minister does that today, I mean, I think 90% people here will ask for his whatever. So, you have to be realistic that when we are making those comparisons, we have to also adjust for those factors which have impeded economic growth. And I'm not again saying that we should only blame those reasons for a lack of performance, because we still have a lot of opportunities. Pakistan still is making positive trends. Just in terms of, since we are talking about the performance of this government, just few minutes if I have, Asfar, do you have? You give much more time to Musaddiq. Okay. In 2000, because I mean, we are talking about the economic growth and what we should do and so on. In 2013, June, when this party came to power, I think the fundamental challenges were, the macro challenges. Of course, we had to improve economic growth, cut fiscal deficit, cut down inflation, cut down discount rate, improve our foreign exchange reserves. All of those macroeconomic indicators were essential. But you had to see that in the context of the macro situation, the security situation, and the energy situation, we had to just ensure that the first 3 years have to be a period of stabilization. If we are simply able to stabilize the economy while we fix these two major economic impediment, the security situation, which Karachi, Talibanization, militancy or whatever, Balochistan, and the energy situation, we simply did not have the energy to kickstart the economy. Massive shortages. Whatever electricity was available, extremely expensive. And even if we were to have, by some magic, the production houses to produce energy, we did not have the transmission lines to transmit that energy. So massive investment. So, I mean, that you could not have expected that in the first year or second year, we would be going beyond 6% or 7% of GDP growth. With those shortages, you had to fix Karachi. And just as a last, as a satisfying thing, because my new job also involves this, Karachi, please understand what it was for decades. For decades. And this is the financial hub of Pakistan. And I said it repeatedly, a city, the financial hub of the country, which could be closed on a 10-minute notice. This was the reality between the mid-90s and early 2013. 10 minutes at any time of the day and night, and not just a peaceful shutdown. We all know what used to happen. Looting and arson and whatever followed that. And we were all hostage to that. All institutions were there, by the way. No one was talking about a major strategy to deal with it. On a day-to-day basis, we were reacting. But here we are 3 years on, And today, if any political party or any group even gives a 10-month notice, they cannot close Karachi. So this is a major change that has taken place, and it has to be, you have to accept that change. And this is the time to initiate that economic agenda to bring Karachi back to where it belongs as the financial hub. And it should be known on a daily basis for its economic and financial activities rather than Pakad Dhakkad and Mardhar or Rangers operation and so on and so forth. If we are able to do that, bring economic activities on the center stage, I think we will all benefit, not just Karachi, not just Sindh, but the entire country. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Saab. And in you, we have someone who's an advocate, who has got the right ideas, the right vision, and the right execution. And hopefully, this will be a new era for Karachi in the future. And I've noticed that, you know, most of the people who entered the room have stuck around for all this time. So that basically means that the speakers were very exciting, interesting, and what was shared here is really a very unconventional conversation. So I'm first of all thankful to all of you for your time, for your ideas, for your vision, for sharing it with the audience. Thank you, Asfar, for arranging something as interesting, exciting like this. But like all good things, this one has to come to an end, and we are running a bit late. So with that, I'd like to invite the shields so that they can be given to our esteemed panelists. If I can invite you, Governor Saab, to come in front. So, first of all, I'd like to call Mr. Paul Kaiser to the front to take the shield. Then I would like to invite, of course, huge transformational impact, Mr. Shaukat Tareen Sahab, to come to the front. I would like to invite Mr. Khurram Rahat Sahab. Also, Dr. Musaddiq Malik, with the condition that there's no debate, there's no discussion at the front of the... Dr. Mirza Ikhtiar Beg Sahab. And lastly, I'd like to invite Asfar to give the shield and thanks, appreciation to the Honorable Governor, Mr. Mohammad Zubair Khan. So we had a very interesting session. We talked about openness. We talked about enfranchisement of people. How to get most out of the people is about not the quality of talent, not the quantity of talent. We talked about a human-centric design. Shaukat Saab talked about that. And we also talked about the importance of vision and execution. So I think we've learned a lot. Hopefully we'll take a lot of it with us to build systems, HR systems in our countries, in our companies as well as Pakistan. I'd like to invite everyone for tea. We're running short of time, so if I would request people to come back within 15 minutes so we can make up for the lost time. Thank you very much, everyone.